وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم، وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم، وحرب لمن حاربكم، وولي لمن والاكم، وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثار مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصاب بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقام هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، وممات ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة الأبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقف هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تاب له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدأ به أولا، ثم لعن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجود. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم، الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا وهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Respected Shaykh, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I would like to start with a reminder for my parents, for my dear parents, to keep your children with you at all times. If you do need to use the parents' room, please make sure that you do not leave your children unattended there. We also have a kids program happening every day. It's going to happen every day during the Majlis program. It's for kids ages 4 until 9. And if you need to know where it's happening, please contact one of the ladies volunteers. I would also like to remind Momineen to kindly donate during these holy nights. We do have a desk set up. Please do make it a point to donate during these holy nights. We also have a pre-recorded announcement from Zahra Trust. It's a charity that is doing great work. Please have a listen and do donate. If I can ask Brother Muhammad to play the video, please.
On the day of Ashura, Imam Hussein stood for truth, and with him stood those who said, "We will never leave you, O Hussein." Today, the world echoes with the cries of the forgotten. Millions of children are without food. Families are displaced by war, hunger, and poverty, waiting for someone like you to answer their call. Last year, because of you, we served 1.8 million meals to people in need across 12 countries. Over 1.4 million people received clean water, including solar panels and water wells that provide ongoing sustainable solutions. In a world torn by war, 23,000 people received urgent medical assistance and long-term care, including cancer treatment unavailable elsewhere. In the sacred city of Karbala, a young girl named Ayat was orphaned at the age of 3. Because of you, she received clothing, books, stationery, and daily transportation to school. Her story, rooted in the heart of Karbala, reminds us of the power we hold today. If you had been in Karbala, you would have given water to Bibi Sakina. Today, you have the power to ease the suffering of thousands of people around the world and to build a foundation for your akhirah. Do not let this moment pass you by. Imam Hussein and his 72 companions are calling you. Will you answer? Will you answer?
Zahra Trust. Salamun alaikum. My name is Abbas Jafri, and I have the honor of representing the Zahra Trust. First and foremost, I would like to sincerely thank the Al-Mustafa Islamic Center for playing today's video and for giving me the opportunity to connect with all of you. The Zahra Trust has been serving vulnerable communities since 2009, with offices in the UK, the US, and Canada. And we've been proudly registered in Canada since 2019. And your support has been essential to the impact we've been able to make. For those unaware, our work focuses on 3 areas. Number 1 is humanitarian aid, providing food, water, shelter, basic needs to orphans, widows, and vulnerable families. Secondly is emergency relief, responding swiftly to crises, natural disasters, and conflict zones to deliver urgent support where it's needed most. And thirdly is self-sustainability, empowering communities through education, vocational training, and long-term development so that they can provide support for themselves and their families, and they're not dependent upon the charity. As the days of Muharram have arrived, we invite you to join our Muharram campaign by donating in the name of Hazrat Abul Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, Hazrat Ali Asghar alayhi salam, Bibi Zainab salamullah alayha, and Bibi Sakina salamullah alayha, symbols of sacrifice, innocence, and resilience. Your contribution will allow us to continue these vital efforts and serve humanity in the honor of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. All donations are tax receipt eligible. To donate and learn more, please visit our website, www.zahratrust.ca/Muharram. Thank you once again for your support, your trust, and your compassion. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So that was the announcement by Zahra Trust. Once again, please donate generously to Al-Mustafa as well as to Zahra Trust. Please help me welcome Shaykh with 3 loud salawats.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه السلام. The first Muslims came to Canada in 1865. They came to Canada from America during the American Civil War. The second wave of Muslims come to Canada towards the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. And they come for the purpose of the Klondike Gold Rush. And the first masjid to be built in Canada was built in 1938 in Edmonton. But the most important wave of Muslims is the third wave of Muslims that migrate to Canada. And they migrate in the 60s and the 70s. This wave is different from the previous waves because not only they settle in Canada, then they build communities in Canada, and then their children and further generations now think of themselves as Muslim Canadians. We see now for the first time a group of people who don't, yarhamukumullah, think of themselves only as Indian Muslims, as Iranian Muslims, as Iraqi Muslims, but a new group of people who now primarily think of themselves as what? As Canadian Muslims. And this raises a number of questions for them that did not arise perhaps for their parents or for their grandparents or for the previous generation or waves of Muslims that came to Canada. One of the questions that arises for them is, can we be Muslims and also be Canadian at the same time? By Canadian, I don't mean somebody who holds Canadian citizenship. By Canadian, I mean somebody who primarily identifies with Canadian culture. Can we be Muslims and Canadian at the same time? Is Islam compatible with Canadian culture, or Islam is not compatible with Canadian culture? And this opens a very important area of conversation. It opens up an area of conversation about religion and culture. And what's the relationship between religion and culture? Masalan, what has primacy? Religion has primacy or culture has primacy? You will notice that even today, some people will introduce themselves as Canadian Muslims, and some people will introduce themselves as Muslim Canadians. And in this flipping of words, there is a profound nuance in there. In the flipping of these words is the question, what has primacy? Is it religion that has primacy, or is it culture that has primacy? And also, what is the relationship between religion and culture? Does religion replace culture? Does religion tolerate culture? Does religion make room and space for culture? Or does religion have a more profound relationship with culture? Okay. Now tonight we're going to start our conversation with a little bit of a philosophical discussion. And very soon we're going to come to some very practical examples. Now, when we come to the Quran, we see that the Quran teaches us that religion has not come to replace culture. The Quran teaches us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has revealed the religion for you. The same Lord who revealed the religion for you is the same Lord who also put you into different cultures. He willed that you should be in different cultures. In Surah Hujarat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses all of mankind. And He says, Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. We have created you from a man and a woman. Wa ja'alnakum. We have made you. Ja'alna means we have made you. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. We have put you into nations and tribes so that you may be able to identify with one another. Now let's think about what makes a tribe a tribe. What makes one tribe different from another tribe? Is it the name that makes them different? Is it the geographical location that makes them different? Is it their history that makes them different? No, you find that what makes one tribe different from another tribe is culture. It's their customs. It's their dressing. It's their food. It's their ways of doing things that make them different from one another. Allah is telling us in the Quran, we have made you in different cultures. So religion has not come to replace culture. But secondly, you find that the role that religion plays with respect to culture is that religion elevates culture. Religion enhances culture. Religion refines culture. Religion does not only make space for culture, religion uplifts culture. Wherever Islam came to a new culture and that culture adopted Islam, their culture was uplifted. You find their culture after Islam is very different from their culture before Islam. Okay? It may look the same, but the difference is between heavens and earth. One of the most important examples that we have in Islamic history is the interplay and interaction between Islam and Iran. Because the first time the Muslims who grew up in the cradle of Islam came across a culture whom they conquered, who came into the fold of Islam, that was an advanced culture. That was a culture that had been there for thousands of years, was when they come across Iran and Iranians. And therefore you find that Shaheed Mutahhari, he has a book, may Allah have mercy upon him, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate his status. He has a book called The Mutual Relationship Between Islam and Iran. And he divides the book into two parts. The first part of the book, the influence of Islam upon Iran and Iranian culture. The second part of the book, the contributions of Iranian to the growth of Islam. So I don't want to go into a very academic discussion right now. I'll just suffice with one example. Right? For example, one of the things that we know is that in Iranian culture, even before Islam came to them, they were very rich in artistic expression. Right? More than the other countries or more than the other nations that were around them. Okay? And you notice that even today when you go for ziyarah, that the architecture is Iranian architecture. The glasswork inside the haram is Iranian glasswork inside the haram. Whether you are in Mashhad, or you are in Karbala, or you are in Najaf. They're very rich when it comes to artistic expression, when it comes to architecture. But look at the difference. You know, Islam infuses culture with spiritual infusion, with depth of thought. It infuses culture with purpose. It infuses culture with divine purpose, with sacredness, okay? So prior to the advent of Islam, the artistic expression in Iran is at the service of what? at the service of empires, at the service of kings, for the purpose of glorifying whoever the king is there. After the advent of Islam, the artistic expression is now at the service of truth. It is at the service of Tawheed. It is at the service of Islam. It is there for the purpose of what? Of promoting the truth. Look at poetry. Poetry is another form of artistic expression. Iranian poetry before the advent of Islam and Iranian poetry after the advent of Islam. And that's not just Iranian culture, by the way. Every culture to which Islam came, you will find it infused it with sacredness. Okay? Before the advent of Islam, what was the content? After the advent of Islam, what is the content? Before the advent of Islam, it is about wine and consuming wine. It is about romantic relationships. It is about earthly love. After the advent of Islam, it is about loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is about living a purposeful life. It is about some of the most profound ideas that you find amongst Islamic philosophers, Islamic mystics, has been poured into Persian poetry. The artistic expression now takes on a very sacred purpose. Okay? So Islam does not only tolerate culture. Islam does not only create within itself a space for culture, but more importantly, whenever Islam comes to a culture, it elevates it. It refines it. It gives beauty and adornment to it. Okay? That's very important. Now, Islam came to Iran. Islam came to India. Islam came to North Africa. And now Islam has come to Canada. And the same way that Islam elevated all those cultures, Islam also has the ability to elevate Canadian culture as well. Not only create space for it, not only tolerate it within Islamic society, but to elevate it. But that depends on one thing. Now this is where we're going to get into some practical examples for tonight. Okay? With the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It depends upon our ability to separate religion from culture. What is Islam and what is culture? Not everything that we think Islam is a part of Islam. And not everything that we think culture is a part of culture. Some of the things that we think are part of Islam, they're part of our culture. And some of the things that we think are a part of our culture, they're actually a part of Islam. Okay. You see, what happens is that sometimes we grow up in Islam in a very confined culture. Okay? So because we have grown up in that confined culture, we think whatever we are practicing, that is Islam. And then one day when we see that a different generation is practicing Islam a little bit differently, or we come across a different culture where people are practicing Islam a little differently within a certain confine. Within a certain confine. I'll give example right now. Okay? Or we come across, for example, Canadian Muslims who are expressing their Islam a little bit differently. What do we say then? We say, look at them. They're not proper Muslims. They don't know how to practice Islam. There is a defect and there is a flaw in their practice of Islam. Let me now give you an example, okay? For example, one of the things that we're blessed with is the culture of Aza of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. And it's a culture that has developed over a period of 1,200 years. And it has developed in different parts of the world. It has developed in Hijaz, it's developed in Iran, it's developed in India, it's developed in Africa as well. Okay? But not all of the practices that we have in the Aza of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein are necessarily religious practices. Sometimes they are cultural expressions of the religion. and they're good expressions, and they're valuable expressions as well. Okay? Let's take the example of ma'tam. Ma'tam that we do, latam that we do, sine zani that we do, it's a cultural expression of our love for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Okay? And let me say right now, it's a very valuable expression. All right? Sometimes you will notice that certain things, if I were to say from here, it doesn't sit in the heart. But when the Nawha Khan says it in the latam and the ma'tam, it sits very deep in the heart. It's very valuable. Okay? But we have to accept at the same time that a part of it is a cultural expression. All right? For example, if you went back to the time of the Imam, did they used to do latam at the time of the Imam? Yes, they used to do latam at the time of the Imam, but latam was something that was generally at that time done by women. وَلَطَمْنَا الْخُدُودِ, and the women beat their cheeks. Secondly, you find that it was a spontaneous expression. It wasn't done the way we do it right now. That somebody recites a nawha, somebody recites a lamentation, and we have choreographed or we have a structured beating of the chest. It wasn't like that before that. What did we have during the time of the Imams? We had these gatherings. Men were present, women were present. There was a curtain in between. Imam alayhi salam used to invite reciters of poetry like whom? Like Di'bal al-Khuza'i, like Abu Harun al-Makfuf. And he would ask them to recite poetry. That was the majlis. And the poet would recite the poetry and people would cry. Imam alayhi salam would cry. Okay? But the way we do ma'tam at that time wasn't there. Now, over a period of time, this has developed into a very rich culture. Okay? But we have to accept it is a cultural expression of it. Right? Why am I emphasizing this? I'm emphasizing this because sometimes you can have a mu'min that comes to the program and he sits in the program, he listens to the lecture, listens to the musibah, cries profusely over Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, maybe sits in one of the latam, one of the ma'tam. But because he's in the back row, or he doesn't beat his chest as hard as other people beat their chest, or he doesn't stay as long as what other people stay. Sometimes people say, in our times, we used to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning, until 3 o'clock in the morning. Maulana, we used to do shab bedari. Look at the generation of today. 11 o'clock, they're gone. There is a khalal. There is a defect in their iman. My dear brothers and sisters, how long we do ma'tam is not one of the alaim of iman. It's a cultural expression of our love for the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Okay? If one generation does less, or if one generation does it differently, or if one generation expresses it differently, or if one culture expresses it differently, it doesn't mean that there is a khalal, a defect in their iman. For example, you see what happens if we can separate between religion and culture, then it allows room for other cultures to enter into the folds of Islam. For example, in Canadian culture, how do they express mourning? One of the practices that they have in Canadian culture for expressing mourning is what? Is a moment of silence. They maintain silence. One of our teachers once said that one of the ways that it can be expressed, especially if you are going out in public and you are in public space, so that the Canadians understand that this is a period of mourning and they can join in it as well, is having a period of silence. A moment of somberness. Well, that can become a part of the culture of Aza as well. Okay? Now you find that it's important for us to be able to distinguish between culture and religion. Not everything that we think is religion, and not everything that we think is culture is culture. Now, sometimes you find this gap is between two generations, an older generation and a younger generation. But sometimes we notice this gap is also there in the same generation. Between people whose one foot is in Canadian society and the other foot is in what? Is in traditional society. Okay? And they are trying to navigate between Canadian society and traditional society. It's one of the biggest areas of struggle today within the Muslim community. I'll give you an example now. Sometimes a person comes to me and says, Maulana, we have to have a very serious conversation with my wife. Okay. Say, why? Say, because Maulana, she has to make up her mind. Either we are Canadians or we are Muslims. We can't sometimes be sitting on this side of the fence and sometimes be sitting where? On that side of the fence. Say, what do you mean? Say, look, Maulana, when it comes to doing chores of the house, yes, my wife reminds me that we're Canadians. We're living in Canada. We're living in the 21st century. We're not living in some village or town in India or Iran or East Africa. In Canada, it's 50-50. 1 week she cleans, 1 week I clean. Okay. When it comes to cooking, my wife also reminds me, we're in Canada. One day she cooks and one day I have to cook. When it comes to our children as well, my wife reminds me the way they are her children, they're also my children as well. So one day she'll get to sleep peacefully and one day I'll get to sleep peacefully. Say, Maulana Sallamna, we accept this. It's 50-50. But then, Maulana, when it comes to pay for the expenses of the house, my wife forgets that we're living in Canada. My wife remembers all of the ahkam of Islam now. And she says, see, in the ahkam of Islam, the wife has no duty and responsibility to provide for the expenses of the house. It's entirely the husband's duty. Maulana, she has to make up her mind. Either we're Canadian, we live a Canadian lifestyle, or we're Muslim. What they mean is traditionalist. We live a traditionalist lifestyle. It can't be we're on this side when it works for her and we're on that side when it works for her. So it's an important struggle today in Muslim society. I know that we enjoyed that example, but it's a very serious example. It's a struggle today for Muslim women and men. Okay? And this is where it's important for us to be able to distinguish what is culture and what is religion. That Islam, on one hand, makes a lot of room for culture, even when it comes to social issues, even when it comes to family issues. Islam recognizes that there are nuances within culture. You know, culture did not develop in a vacuum. Culture develops in a certain history, in a certain geography, in a certain persona and nature of people. Culture develops in a certain need that the people have. Culture is a response to their needs. The needs of one culture may be different from the needs of another culture. So you find Islam recognizes that. And in certain areas, Islam leaves it for the cultures to decide what to do. Let me give a couple of examples. Okay? You find that, for example, in certain cultures, when a lady gets married, she takes on the name of her husband, the last name of her husband. In certain cultures, when a lady gets married, she maintains her own last name. What does Islam say about this issue? Islam is indifferent to this issue. It leaves it up to you in your culture. What have you decided? For example, you find that in certain cultures, a wife will play this type of a role in the house. I don't want to get into details right now. In certain cultures, it's slightly a different role. You know, when the early Muslims came from Mecca to Medina, they migrated to Medina, they had a little bit of a cultural shock. Because family life in Medina was different, the women in Medina were also slightly different. One day, a man came to the Prophet of Allah and he saw the Prophet was a little bit maybe upset with him. He said, Ya Rasulullah, what can we do? When we were in Mecca, we were in control of the house. When we came to Medina, the women are in control of the house. You find to a certain extent, Islam also accepts some of these nuances. Okay? But what Islam does not want is that Islam has overarching family principles. It doesn't want those principles to be broken. Okay? For example, in Islamic thought, in Islamic family life, Islam does not like the expenses to be imposed upon the woman. Islam wants the duty and the burden and the responsibility of the expenses of the house to be imposed upon the man. Why? Because the man is supposed to be the leader of the house. He's supposed to be the provider of the house. He's supposed to be the protector of the house. You will notice a man who does not contribute to the house does not hold status in the house. Whether he likes it or not, will not hold status in the house. So Islam wants him to have that duty and responsibility. But for a woman, Islam gives her freedom. If she wants to work, she can work. If she doesn't want to work, she doesn't have to work. If she wants to work and keep the money for herself, it is her right to do that. It's her right to do that. Okay? Islam wants her to have that freedom. If she wants to become educated, she has the freedom to become educated. If she wants to provide a certain service, she has a freedom to provide that service. That's on one hand. On the other hand, Islam has also other principles. Islam values the presence of the woman in the house. And Islam teaches us what a woman can bring to the house, a man cannot bring to the house. The way a woman is able to manage certain things inside the house, the tarbiyah in certain areas that a woman can give, is not for a man to do. Subhanallah, you find our hadith narrations, the same ajr that a man gets from being on the battlefield and becoming shaheed in the battlefield, that same ajr, that he travels a long distance, he puts his life at risk, Islam gives that ajr to a lady for supporting her husband inside the house. This is one of the overarching principles of Islam. So whilst Islam creates room for culture, Islam also provides guidance to how family life should be within a culture. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Our time is running out tonight, and I want to come to the second part of our conversation. It's also a very important part of the conversation. Okay? So far, we have discussed the idea that we need to create room for Canadian Muslims. A cultural expression of Islam where Islam allows for a cultural expression. But now I want to shift the conversation from the need for Canadian Muslims to now the need for what? For Canadian Islam. Okay. Some have argued that we have now not only a need to create room for Canadian Muslims, we now need to also create room for something called Canadian Islam. What is Canadian Islam? It's an Islam that is easy to practice in Canada. It's an Islam that is easy to explain in Canada. It's an Islam that is easy to propagate in Canada. It's an Islam that aligns entirely with what? With Canadian values. Okay? Some have argued that one of the reasons why we are facing increased Islamophobia and animosity towards Islam is what? Is the fact that our values don't align with Canadian values. That sometimes Canadians find our values, our practices, our beliefs, our way of life to be a strange way of life. Therefore, if we want to overcome Islamophobia, then we have to also develop an Islam that is a more Canadian Islam. You can even take it a step further. Some have argued that if we want to promote Islam in Canada and we want people to enter into the folds of Islam, يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, then the only way to do that is by adopting an Islam that's a Canadian Islam. Okay? You know, they say St. Paul, in the early history of Christianity, he changed Christianity significantly for the purpose that other people would also be able to adopt Christianity. Okay? So now let me give you an example. When we talk about Canadian Islam, what are people talking about? They say, for example, masalan, one example, they say that Islam heavily regulates what people can wear and they cannot wear. People should be in hijab. People should dress in this particular manner. They say, if you look at Canadian culture and Canadian sensibilities don't like people's clothing to be regulated. People are free to wear whichever clothing they want to wear. They don't like society and authority telling them what you should wear, how much you should cover, how much you shouldn't cover. It's outside of their sensibilities. Canadian society doesn't like all of these etiquettes of gender interaction that we put between men and women. We spoke about this yesterday. No shaking of hands, sitting on one side, men sitting on the other side. Canadians, when they look at that, they cannot see themselves adopting this. They have a certain estrangement towards it. So unless we change Islamic values, it will not find a place in Canadian society. وَقِسْ عَلَى هَذَا, you give as many examples as you want. For example, Canadian society is pluralistic. To them, it doesn't matter which religion you follow, as long as you're a good person. We need a pluralistic Islam. Canadian society heavily supports feminism. Okay? Now, when I speak about feminism, I don't mean to say that we don't support the rights of women. Islam has given profound rights to women. Maybe sometimes we have forgotten those rights in Muslim society. So we need to revive the rights that Islam has given to women. Sahih? But Islam does not accord with feminism. Okay? So, but no, it does accord with Canadian society. So if we want Islam to gain acceptance, we need a more feministic interpretation of what? Of Islam. In fact, I remember reading an article, a serious article about 10 years ago. And the person identified as a Muslim in this article belonging to a particular madhab or a particular group. And he said that our leader has taught us how to live a Canadian Islam. I think you can guess which group I'm speaking about. That our Islam is very much in line with what? With Canadian values. We don't have the dress code that most Muslims have. We don't have to worry about halal and haram the way other Muslims worry about halal and haram. We don't have to worry about alcohol-related issues the way other Muslims have to worry about what? Alcohol-related issues. In fact, in our interpretation of Islam, we don't even have to pray the way other Muslims are praying. He says, look at it, in the middle of the day when I should be doing business, I don't have to say the Dhuhr and the Asr prayer. I don't have to stand and bow and prostrate. It's a serious article. And he says that's one of the reasons for why I have been able to become a very successful Canadian businessman. Okay. So now I want to end today's conversation with some reflections about this. That do we need a Canadian Islam or do we not need a Canadian Islam? And I want to share 3 reflections with you. Okay. The first reflection. So when we talk about Canadian values, first tell me which values are we talking about? Conservative Canadian values or liberal Canadian values? The values on the right or the values on the left? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Values on the right or values on the left? You know, today in Canada and in America, there is a profound cultural war going on between the right and the left. They profoundly disagree on certain issues. They profoundly disagree. They disagree on family, on the definition of family, on religious rights. They disagree on, for example, the freedom of speech. They disagree on censorship. They disagree on a whole bunch of social and political issues. Now tell me, when you say we need to be able to align with Canadian values, which one are we talking about? The liberal ones? The conservative ones? The ones who are in majority? But Islam is a flag. It blows whichever direction the wind blows. It doesn't make sense. The second reflection that we have about this is that the assumption that we make is that if we align ourselves with Canadian values, then we are going to get acceptance within Canadian society. Who say that assumption is a true assumption? You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us timeless principles in the Quran. One of the ayat of the Quran that we have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the believers and He tells them, وَلَن تَرْضَى عَنْكَ الْيَهُودُ وَلَا النَّصَارَى حَتَّى تَتَّبِعَ مِلَّتَهُمْ. The Ahlul Kitab are never, lan means never, they're never going to be pleased with you until you completely follow their, meaning what? Meaning your identity becomes their identity. You know, in the early 20th century, Turkey went through an experiment. In their experiment, they decided to become westernized. It was an experiment in westernization. They changed their clothing entirely. They changed their calendar entirely. They changed their naming convention entirely. They publicly, in certain places, would not allow women to wear hijab. Okay? This was all done under Kemal Atatürk. Do people think of Turkey today as a part of Europe? Has Turkey been able to join the European Union? After begging for decades, have they accepted Turkey in the European Union? No. The same experiment today, Mohammed bin Salman is doing where? In Saudi Arabia. Jeddah wants to become Las Vegas. Riyadh wants to become Los Angeles. And they say the way you can consume alcohol in this part of the world, we can also do the same there. The way you dress in this part of the world, and now women are also able to dress in that part of the world. The way you have Las Vegas and casinos over there, mashallah, subhanallah. They have similar in Jeddah. I ask you a sincere question right now. When the common Canadian thinks of Hijaz, of Saudi Arabia, and he thinks of the people of Hijaz, does he still think of them as people who are civilized, who are like them? Or does he still think of them as people, as very rich people, people with big buildings who live in the desert? They still think of them as people who live in the desert. Because the mistake we have made in this assumption is that the problem is with the values of Islam. And that's why we're not gaining acceptance. The problem, my dear brothers and sisters, is not with the values of Islam. The problem is with the mindset of the person who has Islamophobia. The problem is his intolerance and not the profound values of Islam. That's the second reflection. The third and the last reflection, and we will end with that, is that let's make this assumption that we are going to take away the unique values of Islam, the unique features of Islam. What makes Islam Islam? If I can use this terminology, we are going to defang Islam, remove the potency of Islam. I ask you, is that Islam going to be an inspirational Islam? Is that Islam going to inspire a fire in the hearts of the people? You know, we had Malcolm X. Malcolm X, at one point in his life, used to be a gangster. A gangster. And at another point of his life, Malcolm X is willing to give up his life, but he's not going to move his hands away from Islam. I want to ask you that when Malcolm X is inspired by Islam, which Islam is he inspired by? The Islam that aligns with American values? Or the Islam that challenges the oppression that's happening in society? The Islam that gives value to human beings? The Islam that gives value to women? That Islam. Today in Canadian or American jails, 100,000 people have become Muslims, mostly from the black community. Do you think they're turning into Islam because it aligns with American values? Or they are turning into Islam because they see something in Islam that they do not see and they have not seen in American values? When we take away the values of Islam from Islam, we take away the inspiration of Islam. We take away the potency of Islam, right? And therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, not only on one hand, we do need to make room for Canadian Muslims. We say today, on one hand, we do need to make room for Canadians to become a part of Islam, to be able to express themselves within the folds of Islam. But on the other hand, we do not need a Canadian Islam, right? Instead of a Canadian Islam, what we need is a Muhammadi Islam. We need the pure Islam that was taught by the Prophet of Allah. We need that pure Islam. Wherever it went, it inspired people. Wherever it went, it elevated people. Wherever it went, it elevated the culture. We need an Islam that shows leadership, not Islam that follows whatever is happening. We need an Islam that provides solutions, not an Islam that is looking for solutions. And that's the Islam that Aba Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam lived. And that's the Islam that Aba Abdullah al-Hussein died for in the plains of Karbala. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Let us take our hearts now to Karbala. Tonight is a very special night. I know in our cultures we are remembering different shuhada. But in some of our cultures tonight we are remembering the qamar of the Bani Hashim, the saqqa of the children of Karbala, the flag bearer of Hussein's army, the bab of the hawa'ij of the believers. Tonight we want to remember Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Tonight, imagine yourself Bainul Haramain. But instead of looking at the haram of Hussein, tonight you are turning towards the haram of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, whose haram is closer to the river of Furat. And let us do tawassul to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the sake of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه، يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا يا وجيها عند الله، اشفع لنا. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, كان عمنا العباس نافذ البصيرة صلب الإيمان. Our uncle Abbas was piercing in his foresight. He was firm in his iman. Leading up to the day of Ashura, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was always to the side of Aba Abdullah al-Husayn. The most difficult of tasks were given to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. The most nuanced of tasks were given to Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. On the 9th day of Muharram, the enemy of God, Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan, enters the plains of Karbala. And he brings 2 letters to the plains of Karbala. One of the letters is for Umar ibn Sa'ad, and the second letter is for Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and the brothers of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. He comes to the tents of Aba Abdullah al-Husayn, and he says, where are Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and the brothers of Abu al-Fadl? Where is Abbas? And where are the brothers of Abbas? Abu al-Fadl does not respond to him. But when Aba Abdullah al-Husayn says to him, "Oh Abbas, respond to him," even if he is a very wretched person, Abbas says to him, "What is it that you want from me?" And Shimr says to Abbas that you don't have to die with Al-Husayn. You don't have to sacrifice your life with Al-Husayn. I have brought a pact of security for you, an aman nama for you. You can leave the plains of Karbala with your life intact. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, when he hears this, he says, may your hands be chopped off, and may the curse of Allah be upon the pact of security that you have brought for me. Do you want us to leave our brother and to leave our leader, and you want us to be in the obedience of those who are cursed and leave the son of Fatima? We will never do that. Until they reach the day of Ashura, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas is the commander of the army. He is the flag bearer of the army on that day. And one by one he sees the companions of Aba Abdullah going towards the battlefield. One by one he sees that the children of Aba Abdullah are going to the battlefield. The family members of Aba Abdullah are being martyred in the battlefield. He sees Qasim ibn al-Hassan falling to the plains of Karbala. He sees Ali al-Akbar falling to the plains of Karbala. He sees his own brothers. He tells them, go to the plains of Karbala. I have to see you martyred in front of me, defending our brother, defending the Imam of the time. He sees them go. After a while, he sees Al-Hussein is alone. There is no one around Al-Hussein. There is no one to defend Al-Hussein. He comes to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. He says, "Oh my master, لقد ضاق صدري وسئمت من الحياة." My chest now feels constrained and I am satiated from life. Allow me to go and fight these hypocrites. The Imam looks at him and says, "Oh Abu al-Fadl, anta hamilu liwa'i. You're the standard bearer of my army." Perhaps Abu al-Fadl looked at the Imam and said, "Oh Hussein, now you have no army left in Karbala." Imam says to him, "O Abbas, if you must go to the battlefield, then go and bring a little bit of water. You can hear the thirst of the children." My dear brothers, a few days ago, it was a very hot day, and immediately you think about giving water to your children. It was such a difficult day. On the day of Ashura, the narrator says, after a while, even Ali al-Akbar comes back from the battlefield, and he says to his father, "Oh, my dear father, العطش قد قتلني." The thirst is killing me. وثقل الحديد قد أجحدني. The weight of the sword is wearing me down. Imagine on that day the thirst of Lady Sakina. Imagine on that day the thirst of Ali al-Asghar. Abu al-Fadl goes to the battlefield. He admonishes the army of Yazid, but they do not allow him to take any water. He comes back to Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. The Imam says, "Go now to the river of Furat." Abu al-Fadl goes towards the river. He separates the army. He breaks through the cavalry. This is Al-Abbas. This is the son of Ali. He says, "Inni ana al-Abbas aghdu bis-saqa." I am Abbas. I am known as the one who quenches the thirst. Until he reaches the river of Furat. He fills the water bag with water. He comes down from his horse. He picks up the water in his hand. This is the very water that the children are looking for. This is the water that Al-Hussein is seeking. This is the water that is now in the hands of Al-Abbas. He looks at that water, but he cannot see water. When he looks at the water, he can only remember Al-Hussein. He can only remember the family of Hussein. So he addresses himself and he says, "Ya nafsum min ba'd al-Hussein huni. فبعدهم ما كنت أن تكوني." O soul, what is there to life after Al-Hussein? What is there to live for after Al-Hussein? هذا حسين وارد المنون. You see, Al-Hussein is surrounded on all sides. وتشربين بارد المعين. How can somebody think of drinking cold water? Tallahi ma hadha fi'al dini. This is not the teaching of my religion. He leaves the water. He takes it in the water bag. And now he's going back towards the tents of Al-Hussein. He is going back towards the women. He is going back towards the children. He is going back towards the cause of Al-Atash. Al-Atash. As he's going back, they did not wish to allow even a drop of water to reach Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. As he was passing by a palm tree, one of the enemies came from behind, and he knew where was the strength of Abbas. He takes his sword and strikes it at the arm of Abbas. Abbas. Al-Abbas calls out, Wallahi in qata'tumu yamini. Look at my loyalty today. Even if you chop off my right arm, I am not going to turn away from Al-Hussein. Wallahi in qata'tumu yamini. Inni uhami abadan an dini. I'll continue to protect the religion, to defend the religion. He continues towards the tents, but the enemies did not want him to continue. Somebody came from the left side. He aimed at the left arm of Abbas, and he chopped off the left arm of Abbas. He called out, قد قطعوا ببغيهم يساري. They have chopped off my left hand out of their animosity. But Al-Abbas does not cease. This is the loyalty of Abbas. This is the determination of Abbas. This is the commitment of Abbas. This is the iman of Abbas. He continues towards the tent until the enemies realized there is only one way to stop Al-Abbas. One of the enemies took an arrow. He aimed it at the water bag. The arrow pierced the water bag. Another arrow pierced the eyes. Another arrow pierces the body. Suddenly you see the horse of Abbas is turning. Is no longer... He calls out to his brother. He calls out to the Imam of the time. These are the last salams of Abbas upon you. Imam alayhi salam. He can see from afar. He rushes to the battlefield. He comes down to the body of Al-Abbas. He sees his brother is covered in blood. He sees his brother is covered in the sand of Karbala. He sees his brother, the standard bearer of his army, lying on the plains of Karbala. Imam alayhi salam, he comes off his horse. He sits down. One of the moments he sat down on the day of Ashura. He sits down next to Abbas and he says to him, "O Abbas, الآن انكسرت ظهري." My back has been broken. My stratagems are few and my enemies are too many. Imam alayhi salam then returns back towards the khayma. He returns back towards the tents. How would he explain to Lady Sakina? How does he explain to the women and children that the standard bearer is not coming? Whenever they wanted to find solace, they would look at Al-Abbas. Al-Abbas is not returning. The Imam goes to the tents of Abbas. He puts down the tent of Abbas. The one who's going to be in this tent is now not returning back. But I will remind you of the words of al-Banin when she heard about the tragedy of Karbala, and she called out in poetry to Abbas, and she said, "Oh my Abbas, they told me you were martyred. Oh my Abbas, they told me they chopped off your arms. Oh my Abbas, I know whenever a rider falls to the battlefield, he uses his hands to fall to the battlefield. When you fell to the plains of Karbala, فسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. يا حسين، يا حسين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. رک جا ہو کہ صغرا کو مدینے سے بلا لوں. رک جا ہو کہ صغرا کو مدینے سے بلا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. کہتی تھی سکینہ میرا بھائی ہے پیاسا. کہتی سکینہ میرا بھائی ہے پیاسا. رک جا ہو کے غازی کو کنارے سے بلا لوں. رک جا ہو کے غازی کو کنارے سے بلا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. اور ڈرتی ہوں جنازے پہ تیرے تیر نہ برسیں. ڈرتی ہوں جنازے پہ تیرے تیر نہ برسیں. تصویر محمد تجھے آنکھوں میں چھپا لوں. تصویر محمد تجھے آنکھوں میں چھپا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ماں کو غم فرقت کے اندھیرے ہی بہت ہیں. ماں کو میں فرقت کے اندھیرے ہی بہت ہیں. رک جا ہو کے واللیل کے زلفوں کو سجا لوں. رک جا ہو کے واللیل کے زلفوں کو سجا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ہو جاتے ہو تو دے جاؤ سکینہ کو تسلی. جاتے ہو تو دے جاؤ سکینہ کو تسلی. میں پر چم عباس علمدار اٹھا لوں. میں پر چم عباس علمدار اٹھا لوں. ٹھہرو علی اکبر تجھے دولہا تو بنا لوں. ٹھہرو یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین.
یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین. آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار. دریا سے دل حیدر کرار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا. کہ بازو جو کٹے دانتوں میں مشکیزہ دبایا, بازو جو کٹے دانتوں میں مشکیزہ دبایا, جب مشک چھدی پھر وہ حیادار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا. ہر لاش پہ بھائی کا مددگار تھا غازی, ہر لاش پہ بھائی کا مددگار تھا غازی, بعد اس کے کوئی شہ کا مددگار نہ آیا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا اور علمدار نایا. کہ جب تک وہ رہا چادر زینب کا محافظ, جب تک وہ رہا چادر زینب کا محافظ, خیمے کی طرف کوئی ستمگار نہ آیا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے اور علمدار نایا. کہ بازو تھا جو شبیر کا بے بازو ہوا, وہ بازو تھا جو شبیر کا بے بازو ہوا, وہ بے دست وہ دست شہ ابرار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا. کہ جس وقت تماچے ہے لگے بولی سکینہ, جس وقت تماچے ہے لگے بولی سکینہ, کیا مجھ پہ چچا جان تمہیں پیار نہ آیا, آیا ہے اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا. ہے مجھ کو یقین, ہے مجھ کو یقین, نیزے پہ غازی کو یہ غم تھا, ہے مجھ کو یقین نیزے پہ غازی کو یہ غم تھا, قبضے میں میرے شام کا بازار نہ آیا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا, آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نایا. کہ مانگا ہے سکینہ کے توسل سے جو میسم، مانگا ہے سکینہ کے توسل سے جو میسم، سلمان درے غازی سے انکار نہ آیا، آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نہ آیا، آیا ہے علم اور علمدار نہ آیا، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین. همه جا کربلا، همه جا نینوا، همه جا کربلا، همه جا تو حسین منی، نور عین منی، همه جا کربلا، همه جا کربلا، تو حسین منی، نور عین. از لب نهر آب همه در پیش و تاب، خون به لب تشنگی کرده دلها کباب، ساقی تشنه لب غرق بحر و تعب، شده نقش زمین کوه عشق و ادب، همه جا کربلا، همه جا نینوا، همه جا شده قحطی آب، کن عمو جان شتاب، شد خزان گلشن پسر بو تراب، زینب بی پناه در غم و اشک و آه، می کند در خیال به برادر نگاه، همه جا کربلا، همه جا تو حسین. طفل غزه به خاک، خون به چشمش فراق، همچو طفل رباب خفته در زیر خاک، در یمن هم صدا مادران بی پناه، دیده گریان شده چون سکینه ز داغ، همه جا کربلا، همه جا نینوا، همه جا حسین. هر کجا ظلم بود، هر کجا خون حق، جان ما در رهش بی هراس و قلق، گر نباشد عمل گریه کم فایده است، کربلا راه ما تا ابد زنده است، نه فقط با دعا، نه فقط با کلام، با عمل، با قلم، با قدم های خام، تا ابد زنده باد راه خون خدا، هر کجا ظلم بود باش فریاد حق، همه جا کربلا، همه جا نینوا، همه جا کربلا، همه جا نینوا، تو حسین منی، تو حسین منی، نور عین منی، یا حسین 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 یا حسین. محمد و آل محمد صلوات.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا محمد بن عبد الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا إمام حسن بن علي المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك وناخت برحلك، عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن السيد الوسيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر، والأخ الدافع عن أخيه، المجيب إلى طاعة ربه، الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، وألحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا أختيك زينب أم كلثوم، وبنتك سكينة، وهاني بن عروة، وحبيب بن مظاهر، والحر الشهيد الرياحي. السلام عليك يا إمام علي بن الحسين زين العابدين، والإمام محمد بن علي باقر علم النبيين، والإمام جعفر بن محمد الصادق، والإمام موسى بن جعفر الكاظم، والإمام علي بن موسى الرضا، والإمام محمد بن علي الجواد، والإمام علي بن محمد الهادي، والإمام حسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجن. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليك أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
صل على محمد وآل محمد. Brothers, if I can request you all to stay seated. If I can request you all to stay seated, we have a short presentation. We'll have a dinner right after. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. صلوا على محمد وآل. If I can request everybody to stay seated, we have a short announcement, or a presentation rather. Bismillah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salamun alaikum. We'll just start with a small video here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Salamun alaikum. Here today to introduce to you and the community, inshallah, the Ihsan Foundation. You'll see some slides behind me. I know our time is very limited, so I will try and keep it very brief. But the purpose is to introduce the Ihsan Foundation to you. As you saw in the beautiful verses of Surah Al-Rum, aging is a reality for most of us. We know Allah takes us back at the time that He prescribes. However, we see in our ahadith and in the Holy Quran many narrations and many verses where we talk about the care and the respect that must be provided, and the phases that the human being goes through. So and we know here that we do have an aging population amongst our demographics, amongst all of our communities. So what are our responsibilities? How can we help? Aging is a journey that we all take. We see that, you can keep going with the slides, brothers, that, our parents, our elders were there to hold our hands. And now, when they age, they need us to support them, to help them stand tall. We also know that loneliness is another factor that is a reality for many of our aging population as they become isolated, regardless of where they may be. So it is our responsibility and our duty. And this is where Ahsan Foundation has our goals and vision. Our goals are to help the community, and we can go just back a slide there, or this is fine. It's a nonprofit organization that has been established. Our primary goal is providing support and assistance to our respected elders of the community, the greater Shia Muslim community, to help them in aging gracefully. So what do we mean by that? Remaining in their homes as long as they can. We know that that is obviously the best place for people to be. And providing the supports as well as we can to the elders and to the families to be able to age gracefully and receive the best care and support as they do age. And again, keeping our objectives focused on our principles of spiritual and family relationships. Some of the services, so we have met out, and at the end I'll just introduce you who the board of directors are, the team that we have established this foundation. But some of the objectives that we're looking at, and we have developed sort of a 5-phase plan over the next 3 to 5 years. You will get more details of this, but just to, we're in kind of our community outreach and team formation phase right now, and we will slowly introduce some of the services. You can move forward perhaps to the next slides. Yeah, and maybe one more. Okay. Yeah, and ahead, please. And one more. Thank you. Yeah. So just some of the services you can hear there. I'm not going to. You can read the slide. I know we're limited on time. This will be shared out as well. But, looking to government agencies to partner with, because we know that there's a lot of resources there that can be tapped on to help us in this cause and this mission. So stay tuned, is I think the message. I will keep it brief, but if we could just go to the next couple of slides. A brief introduction of the team. You will see our very famous person. I had to convince him for a photo. He says everybody knows him, Brother Wahid, who has taken on the responsibility as our chair to start things off, and supported by Dr. Muhammad Hurmat Ali as our vice chair. Their background and their credentials in the medical field is predominant. And we have Sister Ghazala Zaidi, as well as Sister Wahida Fahim. And you can see their background and their credentials are very well suited towards, and their passion. We've had a few chances to obviously meet and start forming our strategies and our plans. And you can see the passion to give back and help our communities. And so inshallah, with this brief introduction, I will close there. There is an email address. You've seen the faces here. We will be taking this out to all of the communities, inshallah, in the greater Vancouver area. But in the meantime, we'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback. You can reach out to any one of us or via the email that has been posted there. Jazakallah khair. Thank you. Allahumma salli ala
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Brothers and sisters, as the namaz time is fast approaching, it's at 9:35. We will have dinner after Salatul Jamaat or Jama Salat, inshallah. We'll have dinner after Jama Salat, inshallah. Thank you.